My sibling Emily wrecked her fourth vehicle while intoxicated last month, and our folks got her a shiny new Mercedes the following week. When I requested $600 to assist with my prescription deductibles, they said that was my issue, and perhaps I ought to find superior coverage. I have to vent this out since I've been holding on to this fury for weeks now, and you'll be shocked once you learn the complete tale. Caution ahead, this will be lengthy, as the degree of bias in my household is totally outrageous. So let's cover the history. I'm 29, Emily is 26. I got identified with a chronic immune disorder 4 years back that demands regular expert consultations and costly drugs. Even with solid coverage from my employment, the out-of-pocket costs total about $900 monthly for meds, tests, and appointments. Not trivial amounts, but I cope because what's the alternative? In contrast, Emily has been our parents' favored kid from day one. She quit university 3 times, has never kept employment longer than 7 months, and has resided at home without paying bills for the last 5 years. Yet per our parents, Emily faces genuine challenges and requires their aid. The intoxicated driving episodes began 3 years ago. Initial occurrence, she scraped 4 stationary vehicles heading back from a pub. Our parents promptly engaged an attorney costing them $14,000, who managed to downgrade her accusations to careless operation. They confiscated her keys for precisely 3 weeks before returning them since Emily felt down about lacking independence. Next event occurred 9 months afterward. She collided into the rear of a household vehicle at a stop signal while messaging and operating with booze in her bloodstream. The other automobile contained children, but fortunately no one suffered major injuries. Our parents invested another $17,000 in attorney charges, and somehow Emily escaped with merely supervision and volunteer work she never finished. Did they remove her automobile? No. Rather, they funded her to complete a virtual safe driving program that she boasted about deceiving. But this fourth event, this is where it becomes truly wild. 4 weeks ago, Emily was operating home from her buddy's celebration event, entirely drunk. She navigated a turn too quickly and crashed directly into a cement wall, destroying her vehicle entirely. The collision was so intense it activated every airbag and shattered the front glass. She was fortunate to escape with only scrapes. When law enforcement showed up, her alcohol blood content was double the allowed threshold. Double. She was detained right there and phoned our parents from custody, sobbing about how this was devastating her existence and how she required assistance right away. So what did my caring parents do? They posted bail for her in mere hours, retained the identical costly attorney once more for another $22,000, and began discussing how Emily required dependable transport during this distressing ordeal. I observed this entire spectacle while figuring out if I could cover my upcoming month's drug renewals. My medication expenses had increased due to my coverage altering their list, resulting in an additional $400 from my pocket besides my normal costs. That's when I chose to seek assistance from our parents. Not charity, not a present, simply a temporary loan to bridge the shortfall until I could revise my finances. $600 from individuals who just expended $53,000 on my siblings' court troubles across 3 years. I phoned my father last Friday night and described the circumstances. I informed him regarding the coverage modifications, displayed the drug prices, and inquired if they could lend me $600 only this time to fill the void. His reply? He chuckled. Genuinely chuckled at me and stated, perhaps this would instruct me to conserve funds rather than squandering it on whatever I expend on. When I highlighted that these were essential health items, not elective costs, he stated that was my concern, and I ought to obtain superior coverage or locate a superior position. My mother interjected from afar saying I was exaggerating about certain examinations and that Emily possessed actual issues I couldn't grasp. Actual issues. My sibling who has never contributed rent, never maintained steady work, never encountered repercussions for anything in her whole grown-up life possesses actual issues. But my ongoing illness that necessitates continual health oversight is merely me exaggerating. I attempted to clarify that these weren't voluntary therapies, that omitting drugs could lead to lasting harm, that this was truly my well-being at stake. My father interrupted me and stated, genuine grown-ups manage their own health matters without dashing to parents for cash. The discussion concluded with them disconnecting after my mother stated, I must cease making them feel bad and sort out my own existence like a grown-up. 3 days afterward, Emily contacted me totally thrilled because our parents astonished her with a brand new Mercedes to substitute her demolished vehicle. Not pre-owned, not standard. A completely equipped Mercedes with premium upholstery and advanced audio setup. She forwarded me images of it positioned in our parents' garage with a huge ribbon on it like an advertisement. The cost? $42,000. In full, not on credit, not rented. They dispersed in full for a high-end automobile for somebody who just demonstrated for the fourth time that she cannot be relied upon operating any transport. But somehow, my $600 drug deductible plea was excessive to request. When I phoned to challenge them about this clear inconsistency, my mother stated the circumstances were entirely distinct. Emily required trustworthy transport to attend her legal hearings and volunteer duties, while I was merely attempting to obtain funds for unneeded health visits. My father supplemented that Emily was enduring a tough period and required their backing, unlike me who simply grumbles about all things instead of assuming accountability for my own concerns. I inquired them directly how Emily demolishing 4 vehicles, while intoxicated, represents a tough period that merits a Mercedes, while my ongoing health disorder needing therapy renders me unaccountable. My mother's reply was that Emily endures in manners I don't comprehend, and that I'm too self-centered to look beyond my own small matters to assist my sibling when she truly needs kin. That's when something shifted in my mind. Not fury, not pain, absolute insight. I ultimately grasped precisely where I ranked in this household order and precisely what our parents viewed me as compared to their cherished Emily. I informed them I comprehended their focuses now and disconnected. I haven't communicated with them since, and truthfully, I'm finished attempting to comprehend their reasoning. But here's what they aren't aware of. I've been readying for this instance for much longer than they recognize. See, I'm not the unaccountable disappointment they believe I am. I've been employed consistently for 7 years, I possess my apartment fully, and I've been meticulously arranging myself for total self-reliance from them. Because unlike Emily, I truly acquired how to manage my own concerns. And unlike our parents, I recall every single insult, every rejection, every occasion they selected her ease over my genuine requirements. They desire me to be a genuine grown-up who manages his own concerns. Excellent. I'm about to demonstrate to them precisely what that appears like. The fascinating aspect is going to be observing what occurs when they recognize just how much they've been relying on their allegedly unaccountable offspring for elements they've entirely overlooked. This is merely the start. Update 1. Wow, you all weren't joking about relatives revealing their authentic nature when you ceased participating in their schemes. The feedback to my previous entry was amazing. Evidently, I'm not the sole one coping with preferred child disorder in dysfunctional households. Thanks to all who shared their experiences and suggestions, particularly the person who mentioned our parents would freak out once they grasped what they'd forfeited. You predicted it flawlessly. So it's been precisely 10 days since I informed our parents I grasped their focuses and went utterly quiet. 10 days of not responding to their rings, not replying to messages, and certainly not appearing for the kin supper my mother organizes every Monday that I've participated in faithfully for the past 5 years. The initial few days were peaceful bliss. I assumed they were likely glad not to handle their exaggerating, self-centered offspring who dares to seek aid with health charges. I utilized the period to complete some setups I've been organizing for months. Details on that shortly. Then Thursday occurred. My device began sounding at 8 in the morning, mother calling. I disregarded it. She rang back right away. And once more. By the time I departed for employment, she'd rung 17 times and left 9 recordings that began worried and concluded with her virtually yelling about how I was being absurd, and needed to contact her back right away to resolve this like grown-ups. The messages were even superior. She commenced with the typical blame game about how kin doesn't forsake one another over finances, and how let down she was in my conduct. Then she intensified to stating I was penalizing Emily for something that wasn't her responsibility, and that my envy was ripping the household apart. By night, she was insisting I clarify what precisely I anticipated them to do otherwise, and how my demeanor was harming everybody. Friday introduced my father into the equation. His method was distinct but similarly foreseeable. He rang 3 times and left 2 recordings saying we needed to talk about my impractical hopes, and that my mother was distressed about my immature actions. His text communications were more straightforward. He wanted to know when I intend to end this foolishness and begin behaving like an accountable grown-up again. But Saturday was when matters became truly intriguing. Emily called me. Now, Emily never contacts me. We message sometimes about household matters but real voice discussions. Perhaps 3 times annually. So when I saw her identifier on my display at 3 in the afternoon, I knew our parents had dispatched her to manage the damage. I responded because, truthfully, I was interested in how they'd prepared her to deal with this. Emily began with phony worry about how mother and father were concerned about me, and how they simply wanted to ensure I was fine. She stated they were puzzled about why I was upset and desired to assist repair whatever was amiss. When I didn't promptly yield and express regret, she altered strategies. She informed me mother had been weeping daily, because she didn't comprehend what she'd done incorrectly, and father was annoyed because he thought we'd progressed beyond the finance matter. Emily stated she felt awful that her circumstances had somehow triggered issues between me and our parents. I inquired her if she truly felt awful enough to perhaps contemplate obtaining employment and reimbursing them for the court charges and vehicle, or if she planned to cease operating intoxicated and endangering other households, or if she had any plan of assuming accountability for the disorder she'd caused. That's when the authentic Emily emerged. She informed me I was being totally unjust by raising her individual difficulties when this was meant to be about household interaction. She stated my finance troubles weren't their responsibility, and I couldn't fault her for mother and father's monetary choices. She reminded me that she never requested the Mercedes. They purchased it because they adore her and want her to be secure. The discussion deteriorated rapidly. Emily charged me of being envious of their bond and attempting to penalize her for possessing supportive parents. She stated my health matters didn't grant me the authority to make everyone else unhappy, and that I was being self-centered by creating conflict instead of simply managing my own concerns. I informed her she was completely correct. I should manage my own concerns. Then I disconnected. That night, both parents rang together on loudspeaker. This was the discussion I'd been anticipating for years, and they had no clue what they were entering. Father started by stating they'd spoken to Emily and grasped I was enduring a challenging period, but my conduct was unacceptable and needed to cease right away. He stated kin doesn't function this way, and I owed them a clarification for my demeanor. Mother interjected saying she'd been pondering deeply trying to determine what they'd done to merit this handling. She stated they'd always backed both their offspring and couldn't comprehend why I was abruptly acting like they were awful parents. I inquired them if they truly couldn't perceive the disparity between how they treat Emily versus how they treat me. Father stated, naturally, there were disparities. Emily was enduring severe concerns that demanded kin backing, while I was a self-sufficient grown-up with a solid position who should be capable of managing my own duties. I inquired him to clarify how demolishing 4 vehicles, while intoxicated, qualified as severe concerns deserving a Mercedes, while ongoing sickness requiring drugs qualified as individual duty deserving ridicule. Mother stated I was distorting their statements, and that Emily's difficulties were distinct from my well-being matters. She stated Emily was suffering mentally and emotionally from her errors, while my health circumstance was just standard upkeep that grown-ups manage on their own. The discussion endured nearly 3 hours. They switched between protecting Emily's need for backing, downplaying my health disorder, and asserting they'd never treated us differently. Every time I raised a particular instance, the court charges, the Mercedes, their reaction to my drug plea, they had a justification for why that circumstance was unique and not similar to anything else. By the conclusion, Father was informing me I needed to accept that Emily demanded more aid currently and stop tallying like a kid. Mother added that my hopes were irrational and my envy was contaminating our household bonds. I informed them I wasn't tallying anymore. I was finished participating in this scheme entirely. That's when I disclosed some data they weren't anticipating. See, what our parents don't grasp is that over the past 7 years, I haven't merely been working and accumulating funds. I've been meticulously monitoring precisely how much they depend on their supposedly unaccountable offspring for elements they never recognize. For 5 years, I've been covering their deluxe television bundle and online entertainment, because I included them in my profiles when Father complained about the expenses. That's $200 monthly they don't plan for because it automatically deducts from my profile. For 4 years, I've been handling Emily's vehicle coverage because they requested me to include her in my plan when her premiums increased after the initial intoxicated driving. That's another $260 monthly that I've been absorbing without grievance. I've been paying the land duties on their residence for 3 years because they were struggling with a bulk sum, and I proposed to manage it monthly through my lending institution. That's $1050 monthly they don't have to concern about. And for the past 20 months, I've been discreetly covering the community association charges for their senior living area because Father noted they were impacting his set earnings. That's $340 monthly they forgot they weren't dispersing. In sum, I've been funding their way of life to the amount of $1850 every single month for years. Funds they've become so used to not dispersing that they don't even recall it originates from me. But here's the wonderful aspect. Every single one of those setups was arranged as a short-term assistance that I could terminate at any moment. And the payment periods all renew on the 16th of each month, which was the day before. I didn't disclose any of this during our ring. I just stated I was managing my own concerns now, precisely like they desired. This morning, their online access was terminated. Their television is disconnected. Emily's vehicle coverage was revoked. Their land duties are now overdue and will begin accumulating fines. And their community association is going to begin imposing delay charges that build up daily. My device has been sounding continuously since 1. I'm not responding. They desire to witness what happens when their grown-up offspring manages his own concerns without relying on kin backing. Now they're going to discover what happens when they forfeit the kin backing they didn't even recognize they possessed. Update 2. You all, I cannot even start to portray the total mayhem that has broken out since I revoked their utilities. The responses on my previous revision were fantastic. So many of you predicted precisely what would occur, and truthfully, your forecasts were accurate. The person who stated they'd arrive at my entrance within 36 hours, you earn the award for precision. It's been 5 days since their online, television, and Emily's vehicle coverage got disconnected. 5 days since their land duties became overdue, and their community association charges began gathering fines. The rings went from regular to totally unyielding. And when I persisted in disregarding them, they chose to intensify to face-to-face challenges. Sunday morning at 9:00, I'm sipping tea and browsing online revisions when someone begins slamming on my entrance door. Not tapping, full-force hostile slamming like they're attempting to alert the whole area. I peek through my pane and see my father's automobile in my parking area with both parents seated inside and Emily positioned on my threshold appearing totally furious. I unlocked the door because, truthfully, I'd been anticipating this instance for years. Emily promptly attacked me about how I was being totally irrational and needed to resolve the coverage issue right away because she had legal appointments she couldn't skip. She stated revoking her protection was unlawful and could result in her detention. And how dare I jeopardize her court status over some minor household dispute? I inquired her if she thought about that perhaps possessing 4 intoxicated driving offenses should bar her from operating altogether, irrespective of coverage situation. That's when our parents exited the automobile and participated in the challenge on my threshold. Father commenced by insisting I clarify what I believed I was achieving with these immature tactics. He stated disconnecting their utilities was spiteful and harsh, particularly when they were attempting to resolve matters as a kin. Mother interjected saying she couldn't grasp how I could be so unsympathetic as to leave them without online or entertainment when they were already handling Emily's court tension. She stated senior individuals depend on their habits, and I was intentionally making their existences more difficult out of resentment. I informed them they were completely correct. I was making their existences more difficult, just like they made mine more difficult when they declined to assist with my health costs while lavishing funds on Emily's repercussions. Father stated those circumstances were totally distinct, and I knew it. He stated Emily's concerns demanded prompt kin backing, while my health matters were continuous individual duties that grown-ups manage autonomously. He informed me I was being controlling by linking 2 unrelated circumstances. I inquired him to clarify how Emily's 4th intoxicated driving event deserved more kin backing than my ongoing illness requiring drugs to avoid permanent tissue harm. Mother became sentimental and stated I was distorting everything to make them appear like terrible parents, when they'd always exerted their utmost to back both offspring according to their varied requirements. She stated Emily was battling dependency and psychological health matters that demanded empathy while I was steady and accomplished and should grasp kin focuses. This discussion continued for over 2 hours on my front veranda, with locals certainly witnessing a spectacle. They switched between blaming me about forsaking kin, protecting their monetary selections, and insisting I reinstate their utilities right away. Every time I raised the health bill circumstance, they asserted it wasn't similar to Emily's present emergency. Emily kept interjecting to state I was penalizing her for possessing concerns, and that revoking her coverage could lead her to custody if she got stopped. She stated she never requested me to cover anything and couldn't direct what our parents opted to expend funds on. I informed her she was correct. She never requested me to cover her coverage. I just did it when they requested me to aid with her increasing expenses after her initial intoxicated driving. Just like I covered their television, online, land duties, and community association charges when they referenced monetary pressure. Just like I've been quietly upholding their way of life for years, while they forgot those disbursements weren't originating from their own profiles. Father stated I was being silly trying to make them feel culpable for accepting aid I provided willingly. He stated if I wanted to revoke those utilities, that was my decision, but I couldn't utilize it as influence to direct their child-rearing choices or household interactions. That's when I disclosed some extra data that truly captured their focus. See, the revoked utilities were just the commencement. What they didn't know is that I'd been readying for this challenge much more comprehensively than just monitoring monthly charges. 3 years ago, when Father referenced their pension profiles had suffered a loss, and they were concerned about their monetary future, I assisted them reorganize their assets through my money consultant. What I didn't reference is that all their profiles were arranged with me as the joint endorser and crisis liaison, granting me complete entry to oversee their monetary circumstance. 20 months ago, when they were anxious about possible health costs and coverage voids, I assisted them establish a wellness reserve profile and included them in my additional protection plan through my job. Again, with me as the main profile owner and choice maker. Last year, when they were concerned about their home loan disbursements on their set earnings, I discreetly assumed their home loan by restructuring it through my financial institution with improved conditions. The monthly disbursements come straight from my profile, and while they believe they're still making disbursements to their initial provider, they're actually just depositing into their own banking profile that I've been overseeing. Over the past 4 years, I haven't just been covering some of their charges. I've methodically become the monetary foundation, maintaining their whole way of life intact. They've been residing in a residence I possess, expending funds I supply, and utilizing utilities I cover, all while treating me like the unaccountable kid who can't manage his own concerns. But here's the truly wonderful aspect. Every single one of these setups was organized as a short-term aid that I could adjust or end with 30 days warning, and I'd already submitted all the required documents before I went silent. When I described this to them on my threshold, the whole interaction of our discussion altered immediately. That promptly changed from furious insists to worried bargaining. He stated we could resolve our household matters without involving monetary setups that were distinct from our individual disputes. He proposed we all settle calmly and determine a resolution that benefited everyone. Mother began weeping and stating she had no clue I'd assumed so much duty for their finances. She stated they never intended to become reliant on my aid and just desired to grasp what I required from them to repair this circumstance. Emily became very silent and inquired precisely what would occur if I ended all these setups. When I described that they'd forfeit their residence, their wellness coverage, and their monetary steadiness within 30 days, she ceased discussing her coverage concerns. The discussion endured another 3 hours with them, switching between attempting to bargain conditions for reinstating utilities and trying to blame me into retreating from what they termed monetary coercion. I informed them this wasn't coercion. This was me managing my own concerns autonomously, precisely like they'd always instructed me to do. If they desired to sustain their present way of life, they needed to determine how to cover it themselves, just like I had to determine how to cover my health costs without kin backing. Father inquired what it would require for me to rethink the monetary setups. He stated households resolve disputes without ruining each other's existences, and certainly we could discover a middle ground that addressed my worries while sustaining their steadiness. I informed them I'd consider it and inform them of my choice soon. They departed appearing disturbed and perplexed, which truthfully felt wonderful after years of being treated like the household letdown. But I'm not finished yet. The monetary strain is just commencing and they have no clue what's approaching next. Tomorrow is when the genuine enjoyment starts. Final update. Online community. I assured you the genuine enjoyment would commence, and goodness did it ever. The past 8 days have been totally remarkable to observe, and I mean that in the most gratifying manner possible. Gratitude to everyone who tracked this narrative and particularly to those who predicted precisely how this would unfold. You were correct about all things. So after they departed my residence appearing disturbed, I granted them precisely 36 hours to contemplate their circumstance before I executed my ultimate action. 36 hours to ponder what their existences would resemble without my monetary backing, and whether their cherished preferred child bias was worth forfeiting everything they'd constructed their pension around. Tuesday night at exactly 8 p.m., I rang them. Not to bargain, not to debate conditions, but to convey my choice. Father responded with this phony composed tone, inquiring if I'd had time to contemplate our household circumstance and whether we could resolve something that made sense for all. He stated they grasped I felt injured by their monetary focuses, but certainly we could discover a compromise that didn't involve ruining household bonds. I informed him I'd contemplated it thoroughly, and I had indeed discovered a resolution that made complete sense. Then I outlined precisely what was going to occur. Starting right away, I was ending every monetary setup I had with them. The home loan I'd been handling would return to their duty within 30 days, meaning they'd need to produce $3,000 monthly or face repossession. Their wellness coverage through my job would be revoked, leaving them to handle coverage voids and drug expenses on their own. The land duties would become their concern again, with fines and accruals already building. The community association charges would continue building daily until settled completely. But here's where it became truly fascinating, and this is the aspect I'd been organizing for over 3 years. See, when I assisted them reorganize their pension profiles, I didn't just arrange myself as joint endorser and crisis liaison. I also transferred their assets into profiles that I directed as the main possessor, with them noted as recipients. What this signified is that I had lawful power to sell off their holdings, and they couldn't access their pension resources without my consent. Father promptly began contending that those setups were unlawful, and I couldn't direct their funds without their agreement. He stated they'd never consented to grant me that degree of control over their finances. I reminded him that he'd endorsed all the documents himself 3 years ago when he was panicking about market fluctuations, and requested me to manage their assets through my money consultant. Every single file was lawfully enforceable and correctly certified. I'd been overseeing their whole monetary collection for years, while they forgot they'd granted me that power. Mother joined the line sobbing about how they never envisioned I would use their confidence against them like this. She stated they'd always been proud of my monetary duty and never thought I'd penalize them for accepting aid they truly required. I inquired her if she recalled what she stated when I requested $600 to assist with drug deductibles. She stated I was exaggerating about certain examinations, while Emily had actual concerns that required kin backing. Mother attempted to justify that Emily's circumstance was distinct, because dependency and court concerns create prompt emergencies that need kin involvement, while ongoing well-being disorders are controllable individual duties that don't require urgent help. I informed her she was completely correct. Emily's concerns were definitely more pressing and deserving of monetary backing. So I'd organize for them to manage all their monetary duties autonomously, just like they expected me to manage my health costs. That's when Emily joined the phone yelling about how I was ruining their kin over funds, and that I was being spiteful and harsh. She stated they'd proposed to resolve matters, but I was opting to injure blameless individuals instead of having a grown-up discussion about our variances. I inquired Emily how her employment hunt was progressing, since she'd need earnings to help sustain our parents through this shift. She stated that wasn't just because she was handling court matters and couldn't dedicate to full-time work while participating in legal hearings and volunteer duties. She stated I knew she was battling with individual concerns and couldn't assume extra duties right now. I informed her that sounded like an individual duty she'd need to sort out autonomously, just like they'd always instructed me to do. The discussion continued for nearly 4 hours. They switched between pleading, warning of court action, and attempting to blame me into rethinking. Father stated I was ruining decades of household bonds over a single dispute about funds focuses. Mother stated she couldn't grasp how I could be so unsympathetic toward individuals who loved me, and had always exerted their utmost to back both offspring equitably. Emily kept stating I was penalizing her for possessing concerns, and that revoking their monetary backing would harm our parents more than it would harm her. She stated she never requested special handling, and couldn't direct how our parents opted to expend their funds. Every time they attempted to bargain partial reinstatement of utilities or gradual shift schedules, I reminded them that they'd taught me to manage my own concerns without relying on kin backing. I was merely applying their own approach to their circumstance. By the conclusion of the ring, Father was vowing they'd cover my drug costs and assist with my health charges if I'd rethink the monetary setups. He stated they'd been incorrect to decline my plea for help and desired to correct matters between us. I informed him that that was a kind proposal, but I'd already sorted out how to manage my health costs autonomously, just like they'd always desired me to do. Mother inquired what it would require for me to alter my decision. She stated households pardon each other's errors and collaborate through challenging periods, and certainly there was some method to mend our bond. I informed them there was nothing to mend. I ultimately grasped their focuses perfectly, and I was reacting accordingly. They taught me that kin members should manage their own concerns, and I was assisting them learn that lesson themselves. The ring concluded with them pleading me not to ruin their existences over what Father termed a brief error in judgment about kin monetary focuses. That was 7 days ago. Since then, my device has been sounding constantly with increasingly frantic recordings. Mother sobbing about how they can't cover their home loan disbursements and don't know how to access their pension resources. Father insisting I cease this madness before they forfeit their residence. Emily yelling that I'm ruining blameless individuals and that this retribution has exceeded limits. But here's the wonderful aspect. I'm not responding because I'm too occupied managing my own concerns autonomously, just like they always instructed me to do. The day before was when reality truly struck them. They obtained repossession warnings, coverage revocation notices, and insists for prompt disbursement on all their overdue profiles. The built-up charges and fines have driven their monthly commitments to over $4,600, which is more than their set earnings can handle. Father left a recording stating they'd consult attorneys about regaining control of their assets. But the court charges alone would cost more than they have entry to. He stated they're willing to express regret and confess they made errors with Emily if I'll just reinstate their monetary steadiness. Mother's communication was even more frantic. She stated they're facing forfeiting their residence and their wellness care, and she doesn't grasp how I can observe my own parents become destitute over a kin dispute. She stated they nurtured me better than this and can't believe I'd permit my fury to ruin individuals who love me. Emily's recording was the most gratifying. She stated she ultimately grasps that her court concerns aren't more significant than my health requirements, and she's sorry they didn't take my well-being disorder seriously. She stated she'll obtain employment and reimburse them for the Merceds and court charges if I'll just cease penalizing our parents for her errors. But the thing is, I'm not penalizing anyone. I'm just providing them precisely what they always said I needed: the chance to manage their own concerns autonomously without relying on kin backing. This morning, I received the recording I'd been anticipating for years to hear. All three of them together with Father speaking for the kin. He stated they grasp now that they treated me unjustly and made Emily's concerns a higher focus than my well-being needs. He stated they were incorrect to decline aid with my health costs while expending tens of thousands on Emily's repercussions. He stated they're sorry for downplaying my disorder as exaggerating and sorry for calling my needs impractical hopes. Then came the aspect that made all of this worth it. Mother stated they realize now that they've been relying on my monetary backing for years without recognizing it or displaying appreciation. She stated they took my aid for granted while treating me like the unaccountable kid who needed to learn self-reliance. And finally, Emily admitted that her problems were